Hello, hello, hello. This is AJT500 slash Challenger Track 98 slash Heloise Wonderwise slash Hilo, and in this video we're going to be talking about Chichiri just for a bit. We just want to talk about. Normally I wouldn't make a video like this, but I kind of want to talk about her because she does have this bottom skill. Honestly, I don't really care about the rest of these skills like at all. Like she may be an OP character, but I don't really care. The main thing that I'm looking at is this skill, because this skill seems to be what they're trying to fill in for the missing stats from the Omega Exalto weapon. So I kind of want to look at that. So I brought up some tabs for that stuff. So let's just look at Luminera. I'm just gonna go off of Luminera and partially Michael. This is all flip flop, but they're all pretty much the same for all the Ellie's anyway. Well, I mean they all are the same for all the Ellie's anyway, so it doesn't really matter which one I look at. But I'm just looking at these because these are the first ones that came to mind. But so for Luminera, there's 170 at max level for the boost. And the main thing that I should state, most people already know where I'm going with this, but the main thing that I try and look at when it comes to these type of things is I'm trying to look at what you can do single-sided and also hit the fall 0 key, which is 280%, or the Revens, to activate their effects. So that's what I'm trying to look at here. So for the summon can get to 170% once it's fully maxed out. The weapons for Magna can get 20% each, and then the prime marks get 20% each, and then now Chichiri, the four saints, they get 10% each. So I brought up some maths here. So before what we had, before Chichiri existed, is people would run 5 Exaltos, which is 100, plus the summon, which is 270, and then the Primarch, which would be an extra 20, which would put you at 290. So you were technically over that 280%, but you could run it. Now with Chichiri, we have an extra 10, which would get you up to 300, right? So just some quick things that this goes over now. So you can now take out an Exalto, which requires both units in the party, so you need the Primarch and the Saint. This is 4 Exalto. So technically, if you have both of them in your party, you can now go down to 4 Exalto instead of 5, and also do single-sided and hit your fall 0 key and the Revens. The other option you can do is you can take out the Primarch. This requires the Saint to be in the party, but you still need 5 Exalto for that. So essentially you go down to exactly 280 if you take out the Primarch. So that can be good if you were Magna and you just don't have the Primarch yet, but you have the Saint. Then you could technically still hit it. Then you have take out the Saint, requires Primarch in the party, 5 Exalto equals status quo, which again, this is what we already had before Chichiri series existed, right? So what does this all mean, right? So pretty much the main thing for me is that this kind of doubles down on Restrictive Fears that I had before. So if people have watched past videos that I've talked about when it comes to the primal equivalents of these with those Exaltos, is I've said one thing that I really don't like in my case for 3 Exaltos versus 2 is that when you have 2 Exaltos, you are required to have a max dragon summon and the Primarch in your party at all times. Well, there are times that you're not going to either want the dragon or you're not going to want the Primarch. And if you have 3 Exaltos, you have the option to drop either the Primarch or the dragon. You can choose one or the other. You have to keep one, but you can still hit your keys single-sided that way. But the thing with this is that now they're kind of doubling down on that. Well, let me go back. The reason why I say that is because, like I said before, you may not always want those characters or those summons. Maybe you want to take like Grand Order as an extra thing in your summon slot, or you just want to take an extra character that's not your Primarch for whatever reason. One thing I've said in the past before is like for Earth, we drop Uriel in like Fall 0 because we want Lobelia backline, because we want the extra skill damage from all the skill damage nukes that we're throwing out during that fight. And obviously Kame is also backline because Kame needs to come frontline. So there's no room for Uriel because our frontline is like, you know, Shalim, a Sack, and then Olivia. You know what I'm saying? So it's just something like that where you may not always want the Primarch. And now with this, if you want to do that 4 Exalto thing, you have to have 2 characters. They don't have to necessarily be in your backline, but you have to always have the Primarch and the 4 Saint in your party, right? Which is kind of it's pretty restrictive, honestly. It was kind of restrictive with just the Primarch, but now it's really restrictive in my opinion. So that's something I'm not a big fan of. I also have here listed, just for an example in Fire, restrictive setups for All-in-on burst. So let me show you like a sample All-in-on burst that I use for like Proto Bahamut, right? So a sample burst that I have for Proto Bahamut is something like this, right? So for this, you need to have a dark character here in your front line, because you're going to death this dark character, or yeah, you're gonna death this dark character so that All-in-on can come in, and then this last character is technically an open slot. So technically, you could still do either this option or this option, but the thing about it is both of these options still require 5 Exalto. So essentially, nothing has really changed if you wanted to do that. When it comes to doing the 4 Exalto, though, that's when it becomes issues, because now you're in a scenario where in this party I would need, obviously I could swap out Associate for like Michael or Chichiri, but now I'm in an issue where the other one also has to be in here. So I can't death either one of those characters because they're both not dark. And then I have to either give up my Percival, Zeta, or my All-in-on, which just doesn't make any sense, right? So essentially a setup like this still would not work with 4 Exalto, because there's no room to have those characters. And Chichiri, obviously Michael isn't a character that has any type of way to like kill herself, but Chichiri also doesn't. There's nothing in here that makes it so that she can just die, right? So that it's not very easy to work with evokers in general, right? Especially if you want to get them out. But I would even say, even if you just want to have them in your party, because essentially, even if you want to have an evoker in your party, right, most of the time, let's say you don't want the evoker to come frontline, but you just want their backline effect. For example, again, let's say Olivia, or not Olivia, Lobelia. If I had Lobelia backline and I had Michael here, then that means if I want to take 4 Exalto, I have to have Chichiri, or, I have to have Michael. One of them has to be frontline, And I'm saying Chichiri and Michael, and I'm pairing them with Lobelia, but please understand, I'm just saying this in a broad sense of evokers and saints and Primarchs. It's not necessarily these exact units. I'm just using them because they are the ones that exist in the game currently. So, but that's what I mean. Where essentially if you want to use 4 Exalto, you're stuck with those 2 characters in your party, right? Which makes it harder to fit in your evokers. And some of these evokers are really freaking good. So you kind of want them in your party. So it's kind of hard to fit. And especially the thing about it too is, like I said, evokers they operate from coming from the back line into the front, which means you have to like take someone out. Which means if you need to take someone out, aka you need to kill someone, right? If you need to kill someone, they either need to be like a sack character, or they need to be like, it's gonna be hard to sack a character on Ellie, because like if you go into something and let's say like a Revan, right, or Fa Zero or something, where you want to go in there and you want to sack someone, you take someone of a different Ellie so that they die instantly because they have none of the boosts from your grid and stuff. But if you take someone that's on Ellie like Chichiri or Michael for a fire party, they're not gonna just die instantly. You know what I'm saying? So it's hard to deal with those and evokers, which I don't like. It's just really restrictive in my opinion. Another thing that I brought up that I thought about last night was just Kame in Earth in general. Kame is still very, very, very potent when it comes to non-Galleon grid Earth, whether it's Primal or Magna. So I'm very interested how they're going to handle Kame, because Kame is probably the biggest one out of the evokers, where it's just like, you kind of want him in your party, but are pretty much at that point, they have to make like Earth Exalto and Earth weapons worth stacking, as opposed to just using Kame in the backline and doing a Kame grid. That's what they have to do, which I guess it kind of does lend towards that, because the Fa Zero keys are very, very potent. So to get those Fa Zero keys, you're not going to, unless you go double-sided, you're not going to be able to do single-sided regardless, unless you start stacking weapons, which means you're going to have to be forced out of Kame regardless. So I guess that's their point, their objective. But I don't know. We'll have to see once Earth comes around. But that's just something that I thought about in particular was Kame, because Kame grids are still the best when it comes to Earth outside of Galleon stuff. I also said for light and dark, they will, even though right now Chichiri and I guess the other four that have been, or the other three that have been shown off, they are explicitly stated to be the four saints. She even says it like in their Fate episodes. But I find it very unlikely that there won't be a dark and light one. They may not be four saints, but they may be something else entirely. I don't know, because she didn't mention in her Fate episodes, at least the parts that I read. She didn't mention anything about Huolong and Quillen, so I don't know what they are in comparison to the other beasts. But pretty much this wonder thing, I feel like this wonder by itself, like these bonuses, and these bonuses seem to affect regardless, unlike the exos that were cut off from Guild War, these seem to be just boosts to the element. I feel like it's very weird to take all of this off of Dark and Light just because they wanted to make specifically the four saints. It feels kind of weird because these are a lot of extra stats, like especially like this stuff. Like pretty much this stuff down is like really strong. So yeah, I expect to see Dark and Light at some point. So pretty much where does this leave us? Now pretty much I have the same mindset as I have for Primal, where in Primal I've been saying for a while that you can work with 2 Exaltos, but me personally I would go for 3 just to be able to do potentially anything. So if I want to take out a Primarch or if I want to take out a 6 Dragon Summon, I can. Same thing for Magna now. With these, you can work off of 4, and you may be able to work off of 4 maybe in burst related things or whatever. You may be able to work off of 4 Exalto, but I would still have 5, like I would farm a 5th one just in case so that you can still use that type of setup if you need to. And the last point I have here is just a kind of a footnote where it feels like they're deliberately doing things to make you want to go Primal, because I feel like this character set plus the fact that your Exalto has 20% instead of like 30% like the Primal Exaltos makes it feel like they are deliberately nerfing Magna in order to make it harder to do things that you could do easier with Primal. So going back to like the Alanon example, right? You can't really do the Alanon example unless you specifically use 5 Exaltos. You can't do that with 4, right? You have to have 5 Exaltos, where I feel like the same thing cannot be necessarily said with Primal, where Primal you could do 2 Exaltos and then you could do single-sided and just have the Primarch backline and then the 6 Dragon Summon. It's way easier to fit in as opposed to having 2 characters in your setup. So it's just like, I don't know. That's just how I feel. It feels like they're doing that. They're specifically making Magna worse, so that you want to just go Primal, so you don't have to deal with all this stuff. So that's just how I feel. But I don't know. But that's pretty much all my thoughts on Chichiri. I mostly just wanted to talk about that bonus, because that bonus is kind of a big thing when it comes to hitting the keys now. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all my thoughts on this. So I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching as always. Thanks for the support as always. And bye-bye.